Brian, for you, you were really interested, as a whole generation was, in filmmaking when you saw Star Wars. What I find interesting today is that a lot of the documentaries behind the scenes of making Star Wars is just as interesting to me. So take us behind the attraction and how this idea came about.
We were very lucky. How many people start their day off by hearing that Dwayne Johnson had put on Instagram? He loved a show that we had made about 3 or 4 years ago. And he posted on Instagram, "Hey, I love this show." And then 2 days later, I got a call from his company. And we went in and we pitched these people that about a year later would be called Disney Plus. They were not called Disney Plus when we went in. And that, by the grace of God, they greenlit the show.
And Jeanette, you're perfect for this show. Tell us how you got started at Disney.
Wow, I was the little girl that lived 10 minutes away from Disneyland, and it was an extension of my backyard. Back when they had the ticket books, right? We'd go often. And when I was a little girl, I knew I wanted to be a Fantasyland ride operator. I became that, but in high school, it was like not enough to be the ride operator. I realized that there were actually these people called Imagineers that actually created and designed the attractions, and that was it. I was sold. So from a very, very young age, I knew I wanted to be a Walt Disney Imagineer, and to be here many decades later doing what I always dreamed about doing, and now being able to talk about it beyond just making the rides our guests experience, it's like a dream come true, honestly. I pinch myself every day.
Yeah, I used to work for Disney at one point, and that term Imagineer, I was always captured by, because it's your imagination and engineering that imagination. Let's go through some of the things that people can see. Brian, the Star Tours.
I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so that was the first episode we actually started cutting, and that's the first rough cut that we turned into Disney. So we, both us and Disney, kind of learned where the line was between showing how the magic works, yet not giving away too much of that magic. That was all learned while in post-production on the Star Wars episode. But there's still there's some scoop in there, quite a bit actually. So I hope people enjoy it as much as we had making it. As I always say, I still cannot believe this show was greenlit.
Yeah. All right. When I think of Disney, I think of everything is happy. Every now and then you get something like the Tower of Terror. And Jeanette, you had some ups and downs of making all that happen.
Well, we did. And I think one of the things that's really great about this show is that we look at the connective tissue of how our attractions have evolved over time. I mean, listen, we've been around. Walt Disney Imagineers have been around for over 66 years. We're not afraid of change, and we've made changes. That said, Twilight Zone Tower of Terror was a very well-received, popular attraction at Disney California Adventure in Anaheim. And so when they asked us to start thinking about making that change, it seemed crazy. And now it's Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. It's an all new attraction. While it's the same ride system, it's a different story. People are, falling to it and laughing at the same time. And really, to appreciate how Twilight Zone Tower of Terror ever came to be, to look at why we make changes and what the changes look like and what the end result is, to me, that's the story. That's the magic behind making the magic that guests never really have experienced before, or they haven't been told. So there were some ups and downs, but I'd like to say at the end, it's all up.
Yeah, and Brian, that's the cool thing about this. When we say Imagineer, the whole idea of Disney to begin with is that it's kind of like here in Houston, we look at NASA, right? It's like, failure's not an option and takes everything to make it happen. Why is the story, this behind the attraction, so important for people to see? And what's that kind of extra feeling you want them to get beyond what you show us?
Speaking of Houston, I got to give a shout out to my friend Dana, who lives there. So if you're there, Dana, I didn't forget about you. About 2 weeks into this show getting greenlit and getting to start talking to Imagineers all day long, every day, I was like, I think I would have enjoyed this. I'm not saying I'm qualified. I don't know if they would have taken me, but highly unlikely actually. But if they had, I would have enjoyed that as much as I have my own career. It seems to me from the outside being truly one of the greatest jobs anybody could have on the whole planet.
And Jeanette, I would love to be part of an Imagineer meeting, for example, for the Jungle Cruise, building a river in Southern California desert and mechanical animals to populate it. So it's like, okay, where do we start on this one?
Kind of ingenuity and creativity that went into even finding trees, right? We flipped orange trees upside down to make them look like mangroves. We went far and wide to even populate the area so that it looked like a jungle, right? And it literally was these challenges that these Imagineers overcame. So that kind of storytelling, all the stuff that went into that, the guts of the story is really what we're talking about in this attraction. But even beyond that, how that attraction evolved, right? Like originally it was a very serious attraction that Walt wanted to showcase animals, like a true life adventure. Then it became funny, and ultimately it inspired what became Animal Kingdom. So there's a lot there when we talk about Jungle Cruise. It's not just one attraction. It's many, many things and a lot of connective tissue that come together.
Yeah, and then behind you have a castle. It's not just one castle. There's lots of stories, Brian, behind the various castles as well.
I actually knew close to nothing about the castles before the show was greenlit. And I now have probably 5 or 6 books just about the castles. I'm obsessed like a lunatic with the castles. Every single one of them has a unique story, and that's the understatement of the year, or maybe the decade. So I am very hopeful people will love the Castles episode as much as we had making it, because to me at least, it was almost entirely new information, and the stories are fantastic.
And the nice thing is that we all almost immediately connect with this anyway, without you explaining a single thing, because we all grew up with this. It was my first movie. Snow White was my first movie. It was the first album I got. I Can Do Magic, Believe It or Not, bibbidi bobbidi boo, right? So I had all the Disney songs, and it continues from generation to generation, which is what you see in your theme parks, is young and old enjoying it. So thank you very much for giving us this new version of what a lot of us have known as a tradition for a lifetime.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, the Cinderella album. You can stream Behind the Attraction now on Disney+. And by the way, good morning, Dana.